A British lawmaker, Lord Peter Hain, has called on the United States President Joe Biden to suspend Bain and Company from doing business with the government. The State Capture Commission recently linked the management consulting company to corruption involving SARS contracts. Now, Bain and Co will not be allowed to do business or bid for government business in the United Kingdom. That was announced yesterday. What then needs to happen going further? Let's answer that question with Esethu Mancotywa, BMF Deputy President, joining us now. A very good afternoon to you, ma'am. Thank you so much for being on Daytime Update. So, international consequences, or at least the beginning of international consequences for Bain and Co for being part of the state capture project in South Africa. Is this how we should hold all private entities accountable for their involvement?
Good afternoon, Tembekile. Thanks for having the BMF on your show. For us, I mean, this comes as no surprise. In fact, we welcome it. As far back as February, when part one of the state capture report came out, the BMF made this call for any multinational or foreign multinational who has been involved in aiding and abetting state capture to be sanctioned from doing business in South Africa with both public and private. And at the time, I feel like we were seen as almost being a little bit radical, but if we look at what the UK government has done, and as the BMF, we really would like to commend Lord Peter Hain and Ethel Williams, who have tirelessly lobbied to get companies to be held account and have successfully lobbied the UK government. We really would like to commend their efforts. And it's just a shame and a bit confusing that the UK government would have to sanction Bain in this way for crimes committed against the people of South Africa. It's also quite baffling, Tembekile, that the UK government seems to care more about the South African citizens than the South African government, because if you remember with Bell Pottinger, who was accused of basically flaming racial tensions in South Africa to levels not seen last seen during apartheid. Bell Pottinger was also sanctioned similarly in the UK to a point where they literally had to shut their doors. They couldn't find a buyer, they couldn't find new business, they literally couldn't operate and had to shut down. And so it's really baffling that the UK seems to lead in sanctioning and levying consequences concomitant with the crimes committed by these companies. But these crimes have been committed in South Africa against the people of South Africa. And so we find this very confusing, Tembekile. We welcome what has happened in the UK, but frankly for us, we are still calling on the South African government to act harshly against multinationals who have aided and abetted state capture in this country.
And why do you think there hasn't been that sort of harsh action, shall we say, or fair action, some would argue, against multinationals involved in corruption here?
Well, Tembekile, back to what we said in February again, there's this aspect of the State Capture Commission recommendations, the deferred prosecution. So even when you look at what Bain then says in their defense, or the statement that they've issued in response to what the UK government has done, they always mention that they've repaid, I think it's between 164 or 167 million rand of the fees that they gained from SARS. And I think for them, they feel that that is adequate reparations, and we feel that that is wholly inadequate reparations, because the hollowing out of SARS, Tembekile, which is symptomatic of the phenomenon that we've come to know in state capture, it entails basically the systems and processes of SARS completely rendering them unable to effectively collect tax revenue. You oust all the effective and ethical leaders who are trying to do well, trying to do good by SARS, and just completely hollowing out SARS and replacing it with pliant co-conspirators of state capture. And we ought to not just look at SARS as a tax revenue collector. That revenue is actually what goes into the fiscus, Tembekile, and what assists the government to deliver services to our people, to educate our children, to provide healthcare, to provide water, to provide sanitation. So it goes way beyond this repayment of 167 million rands, which as a US-based company is chop change for them. And so we were also concerned about that aspect of the state capture recommendations, where companies could simply repay the fees that they were paid, and that would be seen as reparations.
There's pressure from the United Kingdom now for the United States to follow suit and ban Bain and Co from bidding for government contracts there as well. Do you think that is what then will ultimately lead to the company feeling the consequences for its involvement in the state capture project, especially when you consider, as you say, dollar income when you're paying a fine or paying back money taken in rands is really not even something that a multinational would feel too deeply?
100%, Mbegele. We would like to see, similar to what happened to Bell Pottinger, something similar happened to Bain and Co. And it may sound harsh, Mbegele, but in all the engagements that have been had with Bain and Co, even in response to this sanction, you'd still get a sense that the company just does not understand the gravity of their actions. They call it a mistake, and they say what they did in South Africa was not unlawful, it was just a mistake, and that they've cooperated with the state capture inquiry, which they actually haven't. They've been quite evasive with both the state capture inquiry and the Newzroom Commission. And so, yes, we would like to implore the US government to follow suit, but again, bringing it home, more than all these other governments, we simply don't want Bain to do business in South Africa anymore, whether with public or with private entities.
The South African government, of course, when it comes to the question of state capture and consequences for those who are involved, whether it be private individuals or companies such as Bain and Co, largely defers to criminal prosecution, which you pointed out earlier. In the UK, Bain has now been banned from tendering for government work for about 3 years. In South Africa, the scene of the alleged crime, what would be the appropriate sanction? Do we say that the government should cease doing any work with Bain and Co for life? Do we say 10 years?
Look, Mbegele, I haven't actually given sufficient thought to a term that would be appropriate, but I do believe that it should be longer than 3 years. As you say, this is the scene of the crime, and for me, I don't know why we would actually be afraid of banning Bain and Company for life, as if there are no other these consultancies and advisory companies that the government can work with, or that South African companies can work with, who are even South African-owned companies who could benefit from assisting state-owned entities or even private companies, because these companies, what they do all of these reorganizations and restructures of these companies. Are we really saying that there is no South African company who is willing to play by the rules of South Africa and have the interests of South African people at heart? Is there no company that can stand in the place of what Bain was doing? I don't feel a lot of sympathy, Mbegele, for Bain, and so for me, I would actually call on them to be banned for life.
Esethu, perhaps as a parting shot, I want to talk to you about the issue of consultants, because that comes up a lot when you look at state capture and how it's said to have been conducted. I mean, whether you look at Bain and Co, companies such as McKinsey and the role they are said to have played. What is it about consultants that allows them to be so central to alleged corruption, especially in the public sector?
I think it was the environment, Mbegele, that they found. These are obviously profit-making companies. Not to speak ill of the US and Americans, but in general, they are quite bullish and are quite profit-motivated. And so if they find an environment where they can maximize their profits, and they find that those who they would expect to set rules and regulations are pliant and are willing to bend the rules for them to maximize their profits, then I think that's the trend that we've tended to see with these companies. We are not saying that consultants by themselves, by their nature, are bad and should never be used, but the environment certainly under the state capture years lent itself for these companies to take maximum advantage of the environment and the people, and to simply just maximize their profits, because ultimately that's what they're driven by.
Esethu Mancotywa from the Black Management Forum. Good to have your time, ma'am. Thank you.